Hello and welcome back to The Measure of Things, a podcast brought to you by STABILA, where we talk to people from across the world of construction and talk about the stories that shape them. Today, we are looking up, sometimes a long way up. Do you like that?
I love that.
That's good, yeah. Our guest today is James Preston, abseiling stonemason, a stone conservation specialist. So if you've ever walked past a heritage building and thought, how on earth did they build that? And who looks after it now? This episode is for you. James, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
A little bit of an intro, but I think it's probably worth starting just, I guess, explaining a little bit about what you do day to day.
Yeah, sure. Well, we're kind of stonemasons primarily. We work on historic buildings, so we work on countries' kind of built heritage, so churches, cathedrals, castles, anything that's old and made of stone. And the kind of looking up thing is one of the strings to our bow is that we do a lot of stuff from rope access and abseiling and steeplejacking.
I noticed you didn't name drop then, but like I know we spoke last week, and as I spoke to you, you were up on the domes at the V&A Museum week before at Buckingham Palace. So we'll get into some of the specific jobs and how what a day-to-day actually looks like. But maybe let's go all the way back to the start.
Yeah.
You know, how did you get involved with a trade in the first place?
So one of my best friends from primary school, and still my best friend, his parents had a company that did exactly what we still do. So a stone conservation company specializing in conserving historic stonework, whether that's monuments and sculpture and buildings and church towers, everything from kind of one-day projects to relettering monuments to scaffolding full church towers and kind of doing full repoint programs. And I wasn't really one for school. And so I got an opportunity to essentially be a labourer for that company when I was 16, 17, probably just got my driving test, so 17. And that's where I've been ever since.
So when you say
that's what I've been doing ever since.
When you say school wasn't for you, like what were your experiences? I mean, did you kind of know quite early on that?
Well, I started college. So I started my AS levels, so I guess it would have been 17. And but I never went through with the first year. I kind of came out of college very quickly, and it just ended up in work. And so it just so happens that through that relationship with my friend, like the stone kind of conservation world was kind of put upon me rather than me seeking it out.
Does your friend still do it as well?
Yeah.
You're both working together still now?
No, we're not. We're not, but still very much in the same, under the same umbrella. Yeah.
So how does the training look? So you started there 16, 17, predominantly as a labourer.
Yeah.
What's the path, I guess, from there to where you are now? Because I guess there's a lot of specific skills you've got to develop along the way.
Absolutely, yeah. So as a keen kind of starter with the company, where were we? I think the first project I was really put on was a set of canopied church monuments in Warfield, I think it was, where we essentially take down and rebuild church monuments. So you ever go into a church and see those like huge canopied, like effigy carved people laying out on tombs. A lot of what we specialised in and still do is the kind of dismantle and rebuilding of those structures. So church funerary and monuments, chest tombs, kind of all the things you see in graveyards. And so that's where I started. And it was extremely enjoyable as a young person to kind of start going off, traveling around the country, working on magnificent buildings and monuments. Yeah. The company, bless them, opted to fund my apprenticeship. So they put me onto my apprenticeship in the company that I started with a labourer to then train to become a stonemason.
Right. And that apprenticeship, was that a balance between going back into colleges and working
Yeah.
out
So
on
at the
site?
time, I'm not sure quite what the situation is these days, but we were allowed to do like a block release style
Yeah.
apprenticeship. So we would go and do 6 or 8 weeks in college, and then we'd come back out and we'd do 6 or 8 weeks at work. And so it was a kind of, you would get that time to be taught, and then you'd go back out and use that knowledge to kind of further it practically on site. And then you go,
Yeah.
you're back and forth. So it wasn't just kind of a year in a classroom. It's you use it out on site, and that's, I find that a better way, because then obviously when you're out on site, you're with other masons doing the same jobs, and you're learning from like very like multiple angles, which it's beneficial.
It's the balance of the theory and practical application, isn't it?
Yeah.
You sort of need that if you sat in a classroom without having the opportunity to put it into practice on
Absolutely.
site. It's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, I worked under who I would kind of class as my apprentice master, I think is the kind of traditional term, Chris Barraclough. And, it's those relationships you develop as a kind of apprentice with someone that's taken you under their wing to, almost pass on their knowledge. That's kind of the exciting bit, because you learn the stuff that you don't learn in college, and what you don't learn out of a textbook. You learn the kind of tricks and the shortcuts, if you like, and the kind of things that get you through the problems that you're going to encounter.
Yeah. And I guess the other aspect to what you do, and the best way I can describe this is, I know we had a brief chat about social content, but I started following you a couple of years ago, and you can see videos and reels that you will do where you are up a church spire and you're abseiling down.
Yeah.
And something that always stuck in my mind was which comes first? Is it the stonemasonry or is it the climbing? Which bit?
That's such a good question, because we had this conversation a lot. So with me, stonemasonry came first. So my trade, if you like, is stonemasonry. That's what we do. That's our job. And the rope access stuff that came in kind of along the way, I consider a string to our bow.
Yeah.
So it's not, but you do out there are people that come at it from a different angle. People that have done rope access for a long time that then come into heritage and stone conservation. So there's it's not that the one way is correct and one way isn't. It's just that's how it happened to me. I just happened to be a hobby climber, and there was a few people working, or we were at Corfe Castle, I think, and there was a few people doing rope work. This must have been back in like 2008, or a long time ago now. And you kind of go, all right, that's kind of, I do that as a hobby, and I do this as a job, and that seems like the obvious like path for me. Like why wouldn't I do that if I can combine the two?
And when does the abseiling come in? Because I guess the jobs that you'll do, there's different options, right? You can build scaffolding up, but there's only so far you can go with scaffolding when then it turns
it's so expensive.
Into abseiling. Yeah.
Again, I think it's kind of because of what we do is why the access arrangement is so important. So because we look after historic buildings and we're spread thin, we're looking after hundreds of buildings around the whole country. And usually it's small problems, it's maintenance issues. It might be some roof tiles. It might be a block gutter or a downpipe. It might not always be stonemasonry. It's because of now having all these other abilities, especially with the access, is that actually our kind of skills are used for general maintenance work or cyclical maintenance work, where these buildings that have no money, basically is kind of the bottom line. Churches aren't sitting around with loads of money in their bank, and so to kind of keep them maintained, the rope access is a quick and cheap way to do that. Rather than putting up 100 grand scaffoldings every time you need to take a pinnacle down or work on it or repoint a buttress, because it's out of reach for most country parish churches. It's not possible.
So is that like, I know people like me will look at what you do, and the buzz projects will be Buckingham Palace, Corfe Castle, these iconic buildings. But is the bread and butter those like parish churches? The ones that there's so many of them with all those needs and not a huge amount of money.
I mean, there's a constant need for upkeep for historic buildings, just for many different reasons. Whether it's pointing, whether it's stone defects, so erosion or lamination, or embedded ironwork is kind of what keeps us really busy. Is rusting metals inside stonework where they've been built. So these buildings they need constant work, and so when they don't have the money to do it, you have to look for a kind of cheaper options. And so a lot of our work these days is kind of cyclical maintenance packages. So we kind of do a couple of days a year on a church to kind of keep it, keep all the rainwater goods working and keep the roof coverings in good order, and kind of it's kind of little and lots rather than those 20-year £500,000 projects, which actually is not beneficial. I mean, it obviously is required in some instances, but a lot of the time, 20 years ago is a different picture. You would do those big projects and they'd take the scaffolding and they go, tick, right, that's done. We don't need to worry about that building now. But we found through kind of developing the cyclical work that the little and lots approach, so like having a small budget per year, actually keeps a building ticking along rather than watching it decline and then have to do a big project.
Which is far more cost effective for
cost-effective and budgetable.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's built. That's our, going back to your question, like that has become a lot of our bread and butter, is just keeping built heritage kind of ticking along, sadly.
And that makes sense where the high ropes and the abseiling bit comes in, because that allows them to use budget more effectively, because you don't have loads of scaffolding. You're not waiting until the building is falling apart to have to spend loads of money. Because I guess as well, for a lot of parish churches, that's not how they get money in. They don't wait until they've got hundreds of thousands of pounds to spend.
I mean, they're always struggling. They get legacy donations and people donate to their kind of local churches, and they have small congregations, usually kind of a handful of elderly people that are still using the building. And so it's just a maintenance battle for them.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to have a tour not that long ago at Lincoln Cathedral, and we went through the works department with Rachel, and we were in their stained glass department, and we asked the guy there the jobs that they're doing and the time it takes them to do it, and how much work is there, and he said realistically there are 3 of us, and we've probably got, I don't know, over 100 years worth of work that we would need to do. And it is just that Lincoln Cathedral is obviously an extreme version of the same challenge that the parish church has, but it's that there's always something to do, and the best you can do is just chip away at it time by time.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stone conservation side of it. So you were mentioning before that you'll do repairs, you will dismantle things. When you've done that, do you take them back to a workshop? I mean, what does the conservation part look like?
Sometimes, I mean, because of how we travel and we work all over the country, sometimes it's easier actually just to set up workshops at the church.
Right.
So, when we're dismantling monuments, you lay it out and you work on them there and then, and kind of do your cleaning, do your repairs, do your bits and pieces that need to be done, and then then the rebuild process can start. And so it's rare that anything needs to be taken away. Obviously, if there's replacement elements or bits that you've got to recarve, then you can do that back in the workshop and return to site with those elements. But no, it's generally as much as like pragmatically kind of possible, we keep everything on site so that things don't get lost or broken, really.
That makes sense. And I suppose it's a reduced risk of any issues or problems because you're not transporting things around.
Sure, yeah.
I'm interested though, when you, how do you strike the right balance between what is conservation, what is repair, and what is replacement? Because I guess that is like, it's got to be a judgment call, hasn't it?
Yeah, there's long drawn out processes for getting these kind of projects up and running. The permissions that you need to obtain, and there's all sorts of professionals that are involved in getting to the point where we might come along and start a project. So, architects and engineers, and there's all that kind of pre-construction work that's done prior to kind of putting a shovel in the ground, if you like. But part of that process is agreeing, because Historic England are involved, or English Heritage might be involved. So there's people that control what you can and can't do with these kind of grade 1 listed assets. And so, it's rare that, it happens. We did a lovely monument in Exeter Cathedral where, not 90% of it was we were allowed to recarve, and that's quite a rare opportunity to recarve like almost a whole monument, which was, fantastic project, but it's very rare. So the goal usually is to conserve what you've got to the best that we can, but with a kind of realistic line in the sand where something might not be performing the job that it's supposed to do anymore, and it can't be saved. And so you have kind of sympathetic repairs or piecings in, or kind of, you have those discussions with the architect and with the client, and then permissions are sought essentially to kind of do what we think is best for that particular part of the building.
That it sounds quite a complicated process.
It can be, it can be
a committee that's deciding, because
but then going back to the budget thing, you have to take into account like longevity, because I think things have changed slightly. Like it used to be kind of pure conservation was like the only answer, and actually, you would put sacrificial coatings on so that that in 5 years' time you'd have to do it again and again and again. And actually, knowing now that the money isn't available or it's not free flowing enough to do that, you now have to look at longer term solutions, and that is certainly kind of in the last 10 years, you've seen like a swing between, maybe weighing up those things and deciding on something that might last longer, rather than the pure conservation approach where it was always kind of, the conserving the, with a more kind of sacrificial, sympathetic approach, now not giving us the kind of longevity we need because you don't have the budget to do it again in under 10 years' time.
Which makes sense. It has to be a balance, doesn't it?
Of course it does.
Like conservation is good. You want to maintain these buildings, but sometimes replacement is the best way to maintain the building.
And I'd be kind of careful about that, because conservation is what we do. But I stand by the fact that if a lot of these elements of these historic buildings, they're there to do a job. They're there to perform a job. They're generally to shed water. If you've got coping stones or embrasure stones or string courses or kneelers or all these elements of churches, if they're no longer performing that job, and a kind of sympathetic mortar repair isn't going to bring it back, its ability to do that job back, then you do have to you have to kind of strike that balance of replacement over conservation, definitely.
And that conservation side, I guess when you guys will get involved, there's got to be a lot of, I guess, understanding of the materials that are being used, science, and like things that you'd use for cleaning and repairing.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Like how
compatibility
does
of materials. Again, it's always you always have professionals. I say professionals, we're professionals, but you always have architects or designers, or kind of engineers that have gone down the road in the process of specifying a project. So those kind of things are usually determined, but having the knowledge of what works and what doesn't. So cleaning processes, what you can't, some stones you don't clean with water because they're water soluble. So either you can make mistakes, and you see people make mistakes, and so it's important to kind of have a good understanding of compatibility. What mortars work with what stones, and what kind of how feeble you make your mixes, because you have to understand again, like how buildings move, what they need, how they kind of again, it's usually to do with moisture, and removing moisture from porous materials.
Water is the enemy.
Can be, yeah.
No, it's really interesting actually that, like, I suppose I'd maybe not quite grasped before talking to you that there's a lot of different people that are involved. You can't be an expert in the architecture, in the history part of the building. It's these are decisions that are made by a group of people that bring different expertise to the table.
Yeah. All churches have a kind of quinquennial inspecting architect, and so each of those buildings will have an architect assigned that they've kind of appointed. Sorry, and so they are almost always involved in specifying kind of scheduled works or maintenance works to those buildings, because it's part of their job that they look, to have a kind of overview of looking after that, again, heritage asset. It's part of the. I think it's something they have to have.
Mm. And do the architects and the engineers get involved in the how you get to the end goal that they want? And by that, I'm just thinking, like, do you get pressures to use traditional approaches? Like, where does modern technique and traditional technique blend in for you?
We do. I mean, again, it's striking that balance. You can't always, pragmatically and cost-wise, you can't always do things purely traditionally. If we only ever worked stone with mallet and chisel, jobs would, the costs would be astronomical. So, the modern spin, if you like, on how we work stone is obviously introduction of power tools, battery kit, spinners, flush cutters, all the stuff that kind of make our job quicker and easier have to come into play, because again, it's striking that balance of budgets. I remember 20 years ago, again, when I was just first starting, there were jobs you would go on and it was kind of part of the deal was that actually you couldn't use, they wanted it done with hand tools, and the money was there to do it. Like it was almost kind of a romance, if you like, that, we're going to work on this thing, and actually the way we're going to do it is going to be like traditional only.
Yeah.
These days it's just not the case. It's like offering you two things that are the same and saying one's £100 and one's £1,000. Which one do you want? And so you have to strike that balance of where modern tools and technology can help achieve the goal, but without, I guess, without kind of crossing that line of kind of keeping. I don't know.
It's
do you know what I mean?
I do. You're trying to achieve a traditional endpoint, and if you can achieve a traditional endpoint, applying more modern techniques, so you're not just using a hammer and a chisel to get there, then that's in everybody's interest, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is that kind of what you were?
But you've got to find that kind of there's that balance, definitely.
Yeah. It feels like that must be a consistent word with how your job really looks day to day, is balance. That there's a constant balance, and every day and every job is going to give you different challenges, different clients, architects.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to this, not that I want to keep labouring the same point, but like we are working on buildings that don't have endless amounts of funds. And so you do end up, just keeping them ticking along.
Yeah. I do want to ask about funding, but before we get into that, I just wanted to bring the high ropes bit into it, because that's a fairly unique application of the trade that you've got. What does that look like as a day on site? So you've got a cyclical maintenance job. You're going to be high ropes. What are the processes and the steps that you'll take? So you turn up to site in the morning. What steps are you taking before you're getting up into the sky?
Well, we almost always know what we're kind of up against. So you would have scoped out what you're going to be doing and what you need to achieve and how long you've got to do it. And so the team, they're all extremely experienced and well trained rope access techs. Everyone's qualified in essentially aerial rescue. That's the majority of our training is the ability to kind of be able to get each other out of situations. Like that's what we're
right.
That's the rope access thing. Being able to abseil down a rope is fairly simple. It's actually the training part of it is being able to then rescue each other out of any given situation. So it's important to remember that. I think a lot of people view what we do as kind of dangerous. And actually, the people that are doing it, we don't consider it dangerous at all. The processes that are put in place and the training is such that that things can't go wrong. So that's but a day to day is usually it's as simple as just setting up straight drops. We're anchoring our ropes to whether the exciting bits about it is sometimes like ruined castles and stuff where you don't have staircases to the tops of them. You have to use catapults. You catapult ropes over buildings. You're anchoring them down to weights or to whatever you've got, or vehicles, or to its own structure, and then ascending up ropes and carrying out the work you need to do. And it's quick and it's efficient. And this is another reason why it's really popular. Is because you can kind of come in to a job for a day and you can get to places and get down, remove a tree from a castle and get down again in a day and be gone. And there's no kind of lingering setup stages or scaffolding erection and dismantle, or kind of weeks of drawn out kind of temporary works. It's like you can kind of get in and out very quickly.
So you talked there like that the training really is about protecting each other and being able to rescue.
Yeah.
So when you're doing that setup and even the scoping out stage, what are the considerations that you're putting in from that rescue angle?
It's usually where you've got to get to. I mean, in kind of rope access industry, I mean, there's people out there doing like far more kind of complicated stuff than we do. Usually our work is kind of straight drops. So we're like literally straight down a church tower, for example, or up a church spire. But in the rope access world, obviously you can kind of go under bridges and stuff, where you've got to kind of bolt out and you've got to be recoverable. And so that, we don't get a lot of that. I mean, there's bits and pieces, but it's just understanding the processes of rescuing each other and not putting yourself into a situation where you might not be rescuable or it might be difficult to rescue you. And that's kind of the main thing, is making sure that everyone's kind of always safe.
And how many of you is it? So like, will you always have a consistent number of people that are in the team that are doing the job?
So our team, I mean, we work in pairs, predominantly, but our team, there's 8 of us kind of all the time. And so we're all dashing around the country trying to kind of keep on top of it all. But there's a lot of work.
I suppose there's two themes that I think you've mentioned that I maybe wanted to dig into a little bit. One of them, I think you said all the way at the start that there's not many of you, and I suppose the amount of work that could be done or needs to be done probably outweighs the amount of people that are available to do it.
Stonemasons.
Or even like the specific high ropes. I suppose the question I had is, like you said earlier, there's not many of you that do what you do.
No.
And I suppose the simple question is, why is that?
It's a good question. I mean, over the kind of 25 years that I've been in stonemasonry, we are watching a kind of decline of heritage trades. It's considered an at-risk. They're at-risk trades, and the numbers are scary. I mean, I remember 15, 20 years ago, I was told that there used to be kind of 4,500 to 5,000 qualified stonemasons in the UK. And obviously in the last 13 or 14 years or so that I've been involved in skill build and helping apprentices go through the kind of competition routes, that number is is down to around 1,500.
Wow.
And so it's certainly, I mean, don't quote me on the numbers. I mean, that's kind of what we're told. So it's certainly a trade in decline. And then of those kind of the kind of still active qualified masons that are out on site, you know, a lot of them are, you know, probably like me, like I've just hit 40, you know, maybe in their 50s. And so the next 10 to 20 years of kind of continued retiring tradesmen, it's you know, it's kind of a scary prospect. Like what does it look like in 20 years? I was told at York College yesterday at the Skill Build regional heat that the statistic is that in heritage specifically, so that might cover your joinery trades as well, that seven tradesmen retire for every one that qualifies. And so it's quite a big decline.
Yeah, it seems like we were talking before. I think there is a consistent issue across construction, maybe not quite at the extremes as heritage trades, but the same concept that there are more people retiring still than there are people that are coming into it. But it seems that heritage trades are sort of even worse than that.
It does seem that way. It's quite worrying. I mean, we're kind of watching it. I mean, I remember being young, like 20-year-old, and being on site and having my apprentice master and all these guys that are kind of that know what they're doing and they're kind of doing these amazing projects, and you're learning from them. And now I'm 40. We're not seeing. I mean, maybe they're out there. I hope they're out there, but I'm personally not seeing those kind of 20-year-olds behind us, like chomping at our heels. And that's what's worrying. You know, we need that we need to kind of install that passion into some youth to kind of keep it going, because otherwise, what, you know, I mean, we're in the UK. We've got like one of the richest kind of built heritage kind of assets in the world, and some of the oldest buildings in the world, and you know, they've got to be continued to looked after by someone.
Yeah, like we said before when we were chatting before coming onto the podcast, like the amount of people that will visit the buildings that you work on that are really reliant on people with heritage trade skills to maintain the buildings, and everyone will go and visit the buildings that you have been on without actually realizing, you know, if there aren't the people there to repair them anymore, these ultimately the buildings start to fall apart.
Yeah.
And what you go and see on a family holiday or a family trip to Longleat or wherever it is,
Yeah,
if there aren't the people to repair it, they're not going to be there. There's a
absolutely.
responsibility. I will start by asking the question that I know doesn't have a definitive answer, but it is, what do you think can be done to get those 20-year-olds or younger, but get to a position
younger.
where
I mean,
you've
16
got,
is kind
you've
of
got people that are, you know, like you were 16, 17, that are going, this is the direction I want to go down?
I mean, I can only talk from my experiences, and my experiences were that I got to travel around and work on some of the most amazing buildings in the country, and still do. And you meet the kind of people that are working on those buildings, and you learn from them, and that interested me. It wasn't really the kind of labor of the work that we were doing. It's more the love and the passion of the buildings that you're working on, and you really get that in heritage trades. And stonemasons, you know, I know a lot of stonemasons through the kind of years that I've worked with the colleges and the skill build stuff, and it's a common theme with probably heritage trades. But again, I can only talk about stonemasons because I know a lot of them. That it's a common theme that stonemasons are extremely passionate about what they do. I mean, they might talk about it negatively, obviously, because we're all that type. But you know, it's very obvious with people in our kind of line of work that the buildings matter to them, you know, and people care, and actually looking after them is the goal. It's not about, you know, if you wanted to go out and earn loads of money, you wouldn't do it. You know, there's other ways of doing that. And so, for young people that are looking for a path, it's been fantastic for me. You know, like what you learn and what you see, even like kind of the access you get. So like the behind the scenes stuff, you know, you get to go to these buildings and you get like bunches of keys to go. You're in the roof spaces and in the vaults and down in crypts, and it's all that kind of stuff that makes it really exciting.
I think you will get to see thousands of years worth of history in a completely different way to other people. So we will go and visit the buildings, and you'll stand in the public access areas.
Sure.
And you'll look at the polished facades or things from a distance, whereas you will see them through the eyes at times of the people that built these buildings originally.
Yeah.
Hundreds of years ago. You'll see masons' marks. You'll see
all
these things. You see history, I think, through a completely unique lens.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, it's a privilege.
Mm.
We are privileged to kind of be doing what we do. And I think that is a common thing with stonemasons, is that you are kind of, you feel that weight of kind of looking after the country's built heritage. And because there's so few of us now, or it's getting less, I think there's going to be much more demand. And so going forward, the demand is still going to be there. And so we need to somehow, whether it's industry, whether it's grants or government or something, somehow we need to get or persuade more people to come into these heritage trades. Otherwise, we're going to, where are we going to be in 20 years?
I think it's a purposely provocative question, because there isn't one silver bullet answer to the challenge across all trades, but specifically heritage trades. And I think it's a combination of industry, colleges, like people coming together. And I think one of those examples of where I feel like it is forming is skill build. So that's where you were yesterday. That's what took you off site to go all the way up to York. You live down in Somerset.
True.
To go and commit your time to that event. So there's probably people that are listening that haven't heard of it. So just want to explain what skill build is and what you do within it.
So skill build. So when I was an apprentice, I by my tutor Sean Hepburn, which a lot of stonemasons out there will know that name, put me into basically competition. So competing in stonemasonry, which sounds ridiculous, but it does exist. It's a thing. It's been around for quite many decades. Even Sean, my tutor, himself competed in it in the kind of 80s. So it's been going a long time. And so for the last 13 years or so, I was brought onto that judging team. It's a three-person judging team that essentially goes college to college. So we don't have many colleges in stonemasonry, and so we did have 9, but we lost Edinburgh recently, which is really sad, because that's a World Heritage City training stonemasons, which you'd think they would need, but Edinburgh have dropped stonemasonry. And a few years before that, we lost Weymouth, and Weymouth was one of the kind of most well-known down on Portland, Isle of Portland, and Weymouth, training some of the best masons in the country. And so we now only have 7 colleges. So part of what I do for Skill Build is we put on regional heats, competitions in various parts of the country, where the apprentices can enter into a kind of day challenge, if you like, where we give them a drawing. They make templates, they apply those templates, and they work a stone within a given time to kind of accuracy and tolerances of kind of under 1 millimeter. We give them 1 millimeter in one direction, and then that process whittles down what we then kind of form a national final out of, which will be the best kind of 8 apprentices that year. And over the years, we've done the national final in many places, but in the recent few years, it now happens in November in Milton Keynes at the MK Dons football ground, whatever it is, the Marshall Arena in Milton Keynes. So, and it's just a massive event. We have, I think, the Skill Build has 10 trades, which covers all aspects. And so, but obviously, the stonemasonry has always been the smallest. So we do 3 heats in the UK, and I think like bricklaying do kind of 16 or 20 heats. It's like massively different scales. But yeah, so we see about 10 competitors in each heat. So we see about 30 competitors over the year, and then we have a national final in November. So it's a great event. It's a great thing for the trade. Like it's one of the only places we're still kind of putting it in front of the public to see.
Yep.
And they kind of bring schools in and coach loads of kids come round, and they kind of make like the final is a 3-4 day event, and so they can kind of bus in kids to try and be inspired by various different trades. And stone is always a really visually pleasing kind of one to kind of stand and watch, because it's always amazes people because we're subtracting material to create something rather than building something up. And so it's always a popular one.
It's highly creative. You're creating something. I know all the trades are creating something, but instead of building a structure that is about being level and being plumb and everything, you're judging, is that built straight and true using the right gaps and the right configurations.
Yeah.
Stonemasonry it's more creative. You're creating things out of stone.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, all the trades are creative. I think with stonemasonry, it's more getting your head around, how the processes you take to kind of produce the job, and without there's instances where you can kind of remove stone too quickly that you need in order to get a reference to get the bit that you haven't done yet, and so you can get lost in it. But yeah, it is a different subtracting material to kind of get a result is kind of the main difference, and it takes a creative mind to kind of be able to visualize that and work it, and then obviously the coordination with using hand tools to kind of produce that is it's with very accurate tolerances. That's the main feature of stonemasonry, is that it has to be so accurate.
I think events like skill build and competitions, it seems, I don't know if you use the word, but it seems a bit strange to be doing a competition around stonemasonry or bricklaying or carpentry or whatever it is, but they're brilliant events to bring people together. You talked about the skill build final being a 3-4 day event that gives the trade and all the trades that are involved in it a reason to bring people together. So industry, it allows secondary schools, primary schools to take kids to go and see this. One of the topics we're exploring in a future podcast this year is like how early education can play a role,
right,
and actually highlighting the trades that are available as early as possible. So that is a valid route. You don't fall into it later in life. So yeah, I think they're amazing to bring people together. It's not the one answer, but I feel like it's a start.
It is a start. It's great for the apprentices because again, you kind of get to meet people that are doing exactly what you're doing. You're bringing people together over the country. I know it's small, it's small scale, but it is nice to see people that are out in industry come together, and then and they're kind of apprentice masters and their bosses, and then people like kind of we. It's like one of those events where you see a lot of familiar faces all the time. And you get to all kind of have that conversation, these important conversations about where it's going and what's going to happen, and we need more of it. We really do.
And there's behind the scenes, there's a lot of people, yourself included, as well as colleges and tutors, that they put in a lot of time to make these things happen.
Yeah.
They take time, like time off site for a lot of people that's money that you're not making to put your time and energy into doing these things.
Yeah, again, it shows a passion. I mean, it's the same with all the trades. There's lots of people out there putting a lot of time and energy into a lot of different trades. It's not just stone, but there is I mean, it's exactly that. There's a passion and there's an importance and I think a kind of responsibility, if you like, to try and ensure that our little trade that we love so much has a future.
Yeah. We're coming towards the end, and I've got a couple of quick-fire questions for you. Considering we're a tool manufacturer, we've not actually spent any time talking about tools.
Right.
I've got one question for you on tools.
Right.
What is your most underrated tool?
Underrated tool in stonemasonry?
Yeah.
there's various processes to stonemasonry, and like we talked about, it's kind of reducing a material. And so, if I had to, an underrated tool is probably something like a pitch or a punch, where you can remove material quickly or efficiently to get down to the surface that you're trying to achieve. So yeah, I think a lot of people bypass like punching when they're working stone, and so I'd probably go with that. Always go pitcher, puncher, claw, boast, and then you're down.
Tell me what those 4 things are. Obviously,
Pitchers,
I know, but for people that aren't listening.
Yeah, when you're kind of removing material from a block of stone, so you start with a pitcher, which is kind of a heavy blunt chisel, which is a kind of brute force shock through a stone that will take off a big chunk of stone. So with stonemasonry, you know, the goal is to kind of get down to something, and to do that as quickly and efficiently as possible. So you pitch off as much as you're brave enough to do. And then after that, after you've kind of drafted around whatever you need to, wherever you need to get to, then you're punching. So you've got like a metal lump hammer and a punch, which is like a point, and you're punching through to get down again as far as you're brave enough to do. Because obviously you don't want to go under. Once you go under in stonemasonry, you're under. You can't bring it back.
Yeah.
So your goal is to kind of get down to where you need to be as quickly and efficiently as possible, but without going under. So yeah, I mean, the punch. Why I say a punch is kind of underrated is because you can do a lot of that work with that tool, and I think a lot of people skip that process and go straight to clawing, which is essentially a big chisel with lots of teeth, where you can start digging away and removing down.
Well, you got to have the bravery at first.
Got to have the bravery
to take the big chunks off.
Yeah.
Okay. Makes sense now. This might be a tricky one, but what's your favourite building that you've worked on? That's tricky because you've worked on some amazing places. Yeah.
I mean, we're lucky. I'm not going to kind of deny it. We're really lucky. We get to work on some amazing buildings. We work, you know, on a lot of the English Heritage Estate, a lot of the National Trust Estate, a lot of the Royal Household Estate, and it's great. And I mean, do you know what? Some of my favourite buildings are the ones you wouldn't even, you know, they're tucked away parish churches in the middle of nowhere where you don't even kind of stumble across them. They're just tucked away gems that are housing some either amazing wall paintings or monuments that don't get seen, and I think they're the important ones. Well, no more important than others. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the kind of high profile stuff as well. There was that the Just Stop Oil people when they put all the orange powder on Stonehenge, you know, and then we have to go and clean it off, and they're exciting. It's nice to kind of be called upon to do those really special high profile jobs. But I do love a kind of modest, tucked away parish church in the countryside with some like fantastic monument in it that, yeah, they blow you away.
What do you love about those tucked away parish churches? Is it like the setting, the architecture?
It's everything. It's kind of they're always stooped in history, and I love monuments. I like working on and looking after church monuments. So finding whether they're intricate, whether they're kind of special, what material they're made out of, all these kind of things that kind of monuments can be. Finding special monuments is it's just nice things to see, nice things to kind of look after and keep.
I'm going to ask you probably a question I should have asked you earlier. When you talk about a monument in a parish church, what is that?
Well, if you've ever gone into a church and looked on the walls, you get kind of marble plaques, you get decorative, you get huge monuments. Some of them are massive, 6-7 meters tall, big canopies, big columns, carved figures, statues, depending on kind of who it is and what their stature in the society was at the time. Or, you get family seats, you get kind of collections of monuments in churches where a certain family might have owned the estate or owned the church or, owned the whole kind of local area. And over the years or hundreds of years of their family being there, they get these monuments. And so you get, you go into some churches and they have like a fantastic collection of family monuments or tombs, and they're always kind of special through what they are. It's not necessarily the kind of, it's more about the kind of stonemasonry that I'm looking at, is how these things were made and carved and put on the walls and kept and built. It's always impressive. Some of the stones that are used in them are enormous.
Yeah, I thought it was worth asking that, because I got the impression it's a term that carries a lot of different things to it.
Of course, yeah.
But visually, you walk into a parish church and what you would say is a monument is so many different types.
Yeah, I mean, the whole building could be
things.
classed as a monument, I suppose. But yeah, so no, I'm talking specifically church funerary.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Last question I've got for you. What is the one thing that you wished people understood about what you do?
Understood about what we do? Well, it's the processes of getting to the point where you're actually on site doing a job. That's 99 times out of 100 is a long drawn out. We're usually kind of tendering or talking about projects almost a year in advance. And so when you're actually finally got a team on site, what I don't think people appreciate is kind of the work that's gone into getting there. The kind of pre-construction processes of working on historic buildings, rightly or wrongly, is kind of long. It's drawn out long. Lots of people involved, lots of permissions that are required, and so I think that's certainly kind of an unknown or kind of a hidden part of it.
I think that's definitely one of the main takeaways from this for me. I think maybe I naively thought that a lot of the things you would do would be you turning up, talking to a maintenance department that said we need that sorting out, and you go ahead and you manage it. It
can be, but not often. Usually that's kind of emergency type stuff when you're kind of firefighting or something's happened or a stone fall or an event or something's happened that you need to kind of deal with immediately. But no, usually it's the process of even just procurement, tendering, people pricing and quoting for work. It takes time, it takes months.
Yeah, I can imagine. And like you said before, the balance, there's a balance of different people, different considerations that all go into that day when you're actually on site, or the week that you're there on site. There's months, if not years, that have gone into getting you there.
Can be, yeah. Brilliant.
I would say that is all we have time for today. So, James, thank you. Honestly, it was fascinating, really eye-opening. And, I love history, I love architecture. So to sort of go behind the scenes of the people that, I guess, keep the buildings up in simplistic terms is brilliant. And hopefully for everybody listening, whether you are going and visiting these types of buildings with your family, or whether you're driving past them and you've ever thought about what goes into maintaining them, hopefully this has highlighted the amount of effort that goes into it, the privilege, the responsibility that sits behind it as well. And hopefully we've shined a light on traditional crafts and traditional trades that are getting support. There's a lot that people are giving up to contribute to the future and the longevity of trades like stonemasonry. But there's more to do, and hopefully in doing our little bit to showcase it, that has helped. So if you've enjoyed this episode, please follow The Measure of Things on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts and YouTube, and join the conversation on Instagram @STABILA_UK.